Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here for the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook updated on Tuesday evening, the 21st of January. Now, all the talk this week has been about high pressure in the forecast, but the outlook is back to square one really, as low pressure systems come steaming back in from the Atlantic through into the weekend and beyond. It will bring some colder air as well in from the North Atlantic, so temperatures on the mountains more commonly dropping back below freezing. It will be more often windy again though, with the risk of gales and some stormy days back in the picture. Here's the charts for the next couple of days, and for Wednesday a big high pressure is still on the scene. The centre is around 1040 to the west of us. It's weakened a bit from the 1050 that we had a couple of days ago. It's still a story of low cloud though across many western mountains, shrouding western Scottish hills to low levels, breaks further toward the eastern side of the Highlands, drizzly rain in the west, very little of that getting toward the east. For England and Wales, generally a dry story, a few pockets of drizzle locally, a real mess of some areas of low cloud and fog, and some breaks in amongst that as well. Light winds toward the south, strongest of any breeze is toward the north of Scotland. It's a similar story into Thursday. Generally high pressure continues to affect England and Wales with very light winds, areas of low cloud and fog for some breaks in that as well. For Scotland, a west by southwesterly wind strengthening a bit across northern regions. We've got a front just draped in here with some more persistent rain toward the northwest Highlands. Low cloud again shrouding those western hills to low levels. Patches of drizzle for the West Highlands, very little of that toward the eastern side of the Highlands. Now for Friday, that front does wriggle its way slowly southwards, and some uncertainty just how far south it does get, and that's important in terms of what happens to the cloud across the Highlands. If that front does drift all the way towards the southern uplands, then there's a greater chance for some cloud to break up across the Highlands. I suspect the higher tops will still stay generally covered, but bases should lift as that front shifts southwards. If it doesn't quite get that far, then a greater amount of the Highlands may still be stuck underneath very low cloud. Northern areas and eastern parts, say around the Cairngorms, probably doing the best for the cloud breaks on Friday. A zone of patchy rain and drizzle lingering around along that frontal zone may break up into one or two showers towards the far north of Scotland, but not amounting to a great deal. Wind generally light, and for England and Wales very light winds, and still stuck with some rather stagnant areas of low cloud. Let's have a look at the temperature sequence, and this is for Friday onwards into the weekend and beyond. And briefly, that cold front from Friday slipping southwards, allowing northern Scotland at least to see a drop of freezing level, may go below 1,000 metres for a time. I suspect onwards into Saturday that temperatures stay around freezing point at Munro level and above, particularly where you're in cloud. So it could be a day where there's some rime that exists on the mountains, as you've got quite a damp air mass, but one that's around freezing point. So those higher slopes and rocks may well be rather icy. We then see a marked cold front that comes southeastwards through into Sunday, and that opens the door to some much colder air coming in off the North Atlantic, dropping down to say even as low as -5 at 1,200 metres through Sunday daytime. There may be some chopping and changing of freezing level early next week, but I suspect the Scottish mountains at least stay more generally at or below freezing point through into the week ahead. And once again, we could get some pushes of extensive, much colder air as we go through into the middle of the week. So overall, next week more generally cold compared to what we've seen this past week. So just to go back to the weekend charts, that's the setup for Saturday, with some uncertainty exactly where bits of fronts have got to, but it's that broad southwesterly flow, but that fairly chilly air mass that's still around. It's only a fairly weak warm sector. It's not doing a great deal for those temperatures. So as I mentioned, sticking around freezing point on those higher slopes. A rather murky day around any western and southwestern facing mountains, bits of drizzle and maybe a bit of refrozen rain in there at times. So not a grand day. Best chance for breaks in the cloud towards the north-east of Scotland and towards the Pennine areas. Wind speeds may well be toward gale force and the risk of strengthening through the course of the day. By Sunday, that cold front passes southeastwards. It looks like it clears into the daytime. Showers, though, will follow even across England and Wales, but the more active weather is likely to be focused across the Highlands, where a much more unstable air mass is likely to emerge on a polar maritime westerly flow. It might even be still southwesterly winds, but it's much colder air that's in, and that brings the risk of snow and hail and possible thunder to the western mountains in Scotland, and if that little occluded front gets into the mix, that could well organise itself over a good few hours. The showers will rattle their way eastwards too, across the Highlands, so it could be a rather lively day on Sunday with that one. So a bit of a weekend of two halves. Saturday might bring relatively quiet weather in terms of not much precipitation, whereas Sunday, if you do get precipitation, it's likely to throw the kitchen sink at you. Factor in as well the risk of gales, severe gales pretty widely, particularly across Scottish mountains, very squally conditions coming through in those heavy showers. So the big picture onwards into next week, and we've got quite a bank of cold air that's extensive across the North Atlantic, which is going to have some role to play in our general weather patterns for next week. That's the air that's originating off Greenland and even the northeastern side of Canada. Now that's interacting with some low pressure systems that are coming out over the mid-Atlantic with some much milder air wrapped in amongst them, and that contrast then of much colder and much milder air over the Atlantic really firing up the jet stream, and it gives the potential for some quite stormy conditions to develop. Now what we're watching is if we get any of these secondary areas of low pressure developing again. We had those a week or so ago when it was very stormy. The main parent low then up towards Iceland. It's those secondary features that come in from the southwest which could give some very stormy conditions in the mix at times into next week. Now, freezing levels and temperatures may well chop and change from day to day, but I think the colder air more or less winning overall. Periods where we do get a brief marked lift of freezing level and some heavy rainfall, perhaps torrential rain on quite active fronts, given that clash of air masses, which could well pour down over several hours, then turns abruptly to snow. There's the risk of some thunder and lightning mixed in again. So once again, you're bearing in mind that kitchen sink effect being thrown at you at times. Gales and severe gales quite common. Showers of snow and hail will follow any fronts that go through, and it's that generally cold westerly that seems to be in charge over a few days next week. Now, how long this colder pattern stays with us is uncertain. It really depends through midweek just how far north a zone of high pressure can build to the west of us. If it does, it tips the wind a bit more west by northwesterly, and we see a more sustained, chillier run right to the end of the month. Some indications, this chart perhaps a little bit more suggesting of a southwesterly that pulls milder air back in with time. That is open to question. It's a good week to 10 days away just to see how that one eventually does pan out. So I'm not sure that brings a great deal of cheer, but at least there's some wintry conditions due to be back on the mountains again over the next week or so. We'll update the video again by the end of the week, looking at the weekend and beyond in more detail. Thanks for watching today. Bye for now.